Blake Monroe, formerly known as Mariah May, is a former AEW Women's Champion who has worked around the globe from her home nation of England all the way to Japan before now making her way to NXT and being brought in clearly as a big deal. But will she be WWE's next big star, or is she going to get lost in this absolutely stacked NXT Women's division? I'm Ben, Allison, an autistic wrestling fan who loves to talk and analyze all things professional wrestling, and in this video I'm going to be breaking down the pros and the cons and the career of Mariah May so far before giving my overall evaluation and rating for her. Now, before we get started, if you could do me a favor and hit the like and subscribe button, that would be massively appreciated. Let's start with a little bit of a background on Mariah May, because she grew up in London and grew up an Arsenal fan, absolute legend. And not only that, but she actually started out as a WWE shop influencer. Yes, that's right. Mariah May started out as a fan in the internet wrestling community. In fact, once upon a time, I was actually in a group chat with her, believe it or not. But in 2018, she started training to become a professional wrestler, and while training, actually did jobs as a ring announcer, as well as having a few matches in 2018. But did you know that she's actually already made her WWE debut? Because in 2019, she actually appeared on NXT UK, where she faced Nina Samuels in a losing effort. Nina Samuels was actually involved in the training of Mariah May, along with NXT UK Assistant General Manager Sid Scala. More on that in a moment. But in July 2019, she actually had a trial with WWE, but that was unsuccessful, and she continued wrestling throughout the UK independent scene from Rare Pro to Progress Wrestling, and was clearly improving very fast. But then the pandemic hit and shut everything down. Now, during the pandemic, she was involved in the infamous speaking out movement, where she spoke out about her former trainer and former NXT UK Assistant General Manager Sid Scala. She claimed that while training her, he tried to control her by not letting her wrestle elsewhere, and told people about another wrestler attempting to sexually harass her. Now, it's really important to note that WWE never acknowledged these allegations, and to my knowledge, nor did Sid Scala, and there were a few wrestlers who did come out to defend Sid Scala. And Sid Scala actually remained with WWE after NXT UK as a writer and producer for NXT until last year when he was released from the company. Mariah May would then continue wrestling on the independent scene post-COVID, and even did a tour of the United States independents in 2022. At this point, she signed with World Wonder Ring Stardom, the biggest women's wrestling promotion in Japan, and it was at this point where, to me, her potential became crystal clear. I mean, every time I'd see her perform, she was improving, and I mean every time. It was constant, and honestly, it was impressive as hell. And this would lead her to All Elite Wrestling, who she signed with in mid-2023 before debuting in late 2023, where she became an understudy for the AEW Women's Champion Toni Storm. The fact that she was put in such a major storyline out of the gate showed that they clearly had high hopes for her. And of course, she eventually did turn on Toni Storm, and at this point she went on to face the AEW Women's Champion at AEW All in Wembley Stadium in her home nation of England, in her home city of London, in front of 50,000 fans, where she won the championship. Just 8 months after debuting with the company as well. She'd go on to have a really solid 174-day reign despite a lack of major storylines outside of Mina Shirakawa and Toni Storm, but did have a total of 8 championship defenses. She ended up dropping the championship back to Toni Storm before they concluded their feud at World's End 2024, where Toni Storm was the victor, and it ended with the words "The End" on screen. But little did we know that this was actually the end of Mariah May in AEW. The thing is, everybody presumed, because of how quickly she was being pushed and the high hopes they had for her, that she must be under a really long-term contract. But in reality, it was a 2-year deal. I still can't get my head around that, but that's for another video, another day, not this. But that brings us back to modern day, where she has just appeared in WWE NXT and now goes under the name Blake Monroe. Now, quick disclaimer before we move on. I'm probably going to accidentally switch between Blake Monroe and Mariah May. Obviously, they're the same person. It's just Mariah May is still in my head, even though I should be saying Blake Monroe now. Now, let's get into the pros. By miles, and I mean by miles, the best thing about Mariah May is her facial expressions. They are legitimately world-class to the point where I genuinely think Hollywood are going to come knocking for her in just a couple of years. And I think that could be a major reason as to why she has gone to WWE right now. Additionally, she has that stage presence, that charisma, that it factor, which so many people either have or don't have. I mean, we always talk about Roman Reigns when we talk about it because he didn't have it for the longest time. Fans were saying he was missing something but couldn't describe it until he turned heel and eventually found it. Well, Mariah May, she's already got it. Now, this leads us directly into character work, and Mariah May has always demonstrated an excellent understanding of the characters she is portraying. And with this NXT gimmick seemingly kind of building off of what she was doing in All Elite Wrestling, I do have very, very high hopes because we know she can play this role excellently. Her striking ability is also incredible, with it being precise, looking realistic, but also being safe, and that's incredibly hard to do. And while I'm certain there's some British influence there, I think a lot of that was learned in her 18 months in Japan. And that leads us on to the next pro, and this is another big one, and that is that she learns, and she learns incredibly, and I mean incredibly fast. I mean, when she first started wrestling on the UK independent scene, every single time I'd see her, so once every couple of months, she'd look like a completely different wrestler. She just improved levels every single time, and then she went to Japan, and that growth only accelerated. She got used to their styles so fast, and she improved so fast as well. And at that point, she went over to America, and I actually don't think she gets enough praise for how quickly she adapted and learned the American style, because the British style is very, very different. And Mariah May seemingly learned it overnight. Her other pros is that she's really good at selling moves, especially big moves in big moments. She's great at reversals, and her sequences always seem very fluid on the eye to watch, which is always nice. Plus, she is able to tell a story within the ropes to a very high standard. Now on to the weaknesses, and keeping in mind that Mariah May has only been competing for 7 years, and only really 3 of those years on a full-time basis, she's got surprisingly very, very few. The biggest one is her kickouts, right? Her kickouts, especially during the middle and ending of matches, they always seem a little bit too soft. Like, they're not dramatic enough, right? And there is a time and a place for a soft kick out when, you really think they're completely done for and they're not going to kick out. But she does them way too often, and she never really seems to do dramatic kickouts. And it's those dramatic kickouts that really get the crowd to just cheer and go absolutely mental. And that is the one common theme throughout a lot of her matches in AEW, was that when she'd kick out, there wouldn't always be that big of a reaction, and that's why I think it is. Additionally, when pinning people, especially in the middle of the match, later on in the matches it's not as obvious, but in the middle of matches, she'd almost break up the pin herself when her opponent's about to kick out. Like, she lifts herself up a bit, but it's a little bit too obvious. But again, that's me really, really nitpicking, right? Those are really, really small things. But those are what we are talking about with Mariah May. A few other small negatives are, at times I feel like she could play into the live crowd reaction a little bit better during promos and even matches. When they're chanting certain things, sometimes she's not always the quickest to adapt. But again, she's not had too much experience even doing that, and she's amazing when she does get the chance. And also, sometimes her matches do feel a bit rushed. It does feel like she could just slow things down a tad, take a deep breath. But I will actually give her some leeway on that, because women's wrestling in AEW really doesn't get the time that it deserves, and I feel like she was trying to fit in more to those matches just to be able to, because of the time restraints. And another thing, and this is something which I think the Performance Center is going to help her massively with, is that sometimes during matches, it kind of looks like she is waiting for the next spot in between big spots. Like, she is trying to get in position, and it's just all a little bit, or it's just waiting around even, and it's just a little bit too obvious at times. But that is something which historically the PC has been excellent at helping performance to improve at. So I mean, really, all of these are really, really small things, and things which could easily be improved on, and like I said, we know she improves incredibly fast. Now, before I get onto my overall rating and overall analysis for her, let me just give you guys a couple of recommended matches in case you haven't seen them. I'll start with the obvious one, and of course, that is the Toni Storm trilogy, from starting in AEW at All in London to then AEW Grand Slam in Australia and then concluding at World's End in that match with Stuart Wrestling Republic we rated 5 stars. Another match to check out from her time in AEW was against Willow at Wrestle Dream 2024. And then if you have access to World Wondering Stardom and you haven't seen it yet, check out her match with Julia from the 2023 5-Star Grand Prix, because that was really impressive and was the first time that I was like, wow, she does have world-class potential here. It's not too long, but if you've got I think it's 10 to 15 minutes, it's worth the watch. Now on to my overall rating, and my overall rating is out of 100. And the categories I rate on are technical execution, match dynamics, charisma, promo skills, selling ability, ring psychology, athleticism, character work, and presentation and adaptability. And adding the numbers up, right now, I really think she's at a really impressive 83 out of 100. But like I said, we know she is quick to adapt. We know she learns really fast. So I think when it comes to her potential, it could be anywhere between 85 to 95. And I know some people aren't happy about the fact she's starting in NXT, but I'll say this, right? I think she's got a lot more of a chance of actually reaching that 95 by starting in that PC, doing a few months there. And honestly, I think she's going to improve just massively over these next few months. But there we have it, the conclusion to the first ever Allison Analysis on a professional wrestler. I'm hoping to do these every Thursday, and if you did enjoy the video, once again, please hit that like button and let me know your thoughts in the comments. As I always have done and as I always will, I will be reading all the comments down below and liking and replying to some as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a fantastic Thursday. Peace.